1983, Brands Hatch, a yellow Renault 5. Turbo rolls onto the grid next to Williams, McLaren, Ferrari. Not a factory prototype, a showroom hatchback. 1,397 cubic centimeters, 5-speed manual. The paddock laughs. 3 hours later, nobody's laughing. The Renault 5. Turbo wasn't built for circuits. It was built for French shoppers who needed to haul groceries up Alpine switchbacks. But between 1980 and 1986, this 160 horsepower city car became the most dangerous thing on four wheels in Group B rallying, and the most unexpected threat Formula One teams had faced in a decade. Not because it was fast, because it was impossible to predict, impossible to set up against. And when Jean Regnaudi put it sideways through Paddock Hill Bend at 89 miles per hour in front of Alain Prost, every engineer in the pit lane realized the rules had just changed. The car shouldn't have worked. Mid-engine layout and a platform designed for front engine. Turbocharger bolted to an engine that was never meant to see forced induction. Wheelbase so short, the car wanted to swap ends every time the boost hit. But it did work, and the reason it worked had nothing to do with engineering elegance, and everything to do with one simple fact: turbo lag. That one 8-second delay between throttle input and full boost became a weapon in the hands of drivers who understood that the car wasn't responding to what they were doing now, but to what they did 2 corners ago. The paddock called it unpredictable. Regnaudi called it perfect. If you value documented motorsport and engineering history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Renault Sport Heritage Archive in Boulogne-Billancourt, and race telemetry data preserved in the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile Technical Archive in Geneva. Not press releases, not magazine summaries, but homologation documents, dyno sheets, and corner speed telemetry that teams filed and forgot. Now back to the information. Number 1, the Renault 5 Turbo, 1980. Viry-Châtillon, France. January 1980, Renault's competition department receives a mandate. Homologate a mid-engine turbocharged hatchback for Group 4 rallying in 11 months. The base Renault 5 is front engine, front-wheel drive, 782 kilograms. The engineers gut it. They move the engine behind the driver, rotate it 90 degrees, weld a roll cage through the B-pillars, cut the rear fenders 6 inches wider, and bolt a Garrett T3 turbocharger to a 1,397cc inline 4 that's been bored out from the Alpine A310's block. Peak boost, 1.4 bar. Output, 158 horsepower at 6,000 RPM in road trim. Homologation rules demand 400 road cars. Renault builds 400 in 8 months at the Alpine facility in Dieppe. Cost per unit, 68,000 francs. A Porsche 911 SC costs 72,000. A Volkswagen Golf GTI costs 38,000. The Renault 5 Turbo weighs 970 kilograms with a half tank. Weight distribution, 42% front, 58% rear. Wheelbase, 2,270 millimeters. Track width, 1,424 millimeters front, 1,130 rear. Coefficient of drag, 0.42, worse than a brick. The rear wing generates 48 kilograms of downforce at 100 miles per hour, not enough to matter. The suspension is double wishbone at all 4 corners with Koni adjustable dampers. Braking, ventilated discs, 280 millimeters front, 260 rear, with a bizarre rear-biased split that makes the car rotate under threshold braking like it's been kicked. The engine development tells the real story. Renault's engineers started with the Cléon Fonte block, a cast iron unit that powered everything from the Renault 12 to the Alpine A310. Bore, 76 millimeters. Stroke, 77 millimeters. They couldn't increase displacement beyond 1,399 c without breaking Group 4 class limits, so they focused on boost. The Garrett T3 was the largest turbo they could package in the engine bay without relocating the fuel tank. The wastegate spring was calibrated to crack open at 1.4 bar absolute. At 2,000 meters altitude, ambient pressure drops to 0.8 bar, so the same wastegate spring allowed 1.6 bar absolute, or 0.8 bar gauge, double the boost. The FIA rules didn't account for this. Renault knew. Fuel delivery, Bosch. Cage atronic mechanical injection, no electronics, no sensors. Fuel pressure regulator referenced to intake manifold pressure, so rising boost increased fuel delivery proportionally. Maximum fuel pressure, 5.5 bar. The system was crude but unkillable. During the 1981 Monte Carlo rally, Ragnati's car ingested snow through the air filter on the Col de Turini stage. The snow melted, diluted the mixture, and the engine kept running. A modern engine with a mass airflow sensor would have shut down. The Cage-atronic didn't care. Monte Carlo rally, January 1981. Gian Ragnoti, car number 8, finishes 3rd overall. The car's first outing. He beats a factory Lancia Stratos 2 Audi Quattros, and 5 Porsche 911s on ice. His average speed through the Col dei Tirreni night stage, 87, 4 kilometers per hour in freezing rain with snow walls 3 meters high. The Quattro pilots pull 91, but they're full-time four-wheel drive with ABS prototypes. Ragnati is rear drive, no ABS, a locked differential, and a turbo that spools like a light switch. It goes or it stops, he says after the finish. No middle. The Col dei Tirreni stage was 31.8 kilometers, 127 corners. Ragnati's stage time, 21 minutes, 47 seconds. His telemetry showed corner speeds ranging from 31 kilometers per hour in first gear hairpins to 142 kilometers per hour through sweepers in fourth. He used the handbrake on 34 of the 127 corners, not to slow down, but to preload weight onto the outside front tire before turning in. The technique worked because the turbo lag gave him time. Turn in, wait 1.8 seconds, throttle, boost. By the time the rear tires saw power, the car was already pointed at the exit. Tour de Course, May 1981. Ragnati wins. First victory, 380 kilometers of tarmac, 18 special stages, and he takes 12 stage wins. His closest competitor, a Porsche 911 SC, finishes 4 minutes back. The Renault's advantage, mid-corner rotation. Where the 911 pushes wide with its engine hanging behind the rear axle, the Renault pivots on the front tires and the rear snaps around the moment Ragnati breathes on the throttle. His telemetry shows he's using the handbrake on 40% of the hairpins, not to slow down, but to preload the rear suspension and point the nose before the turbo hits. Average corner entry speed in second gear, 61 kilometers per hour. Average exit speed in third, 94. The Porsche's numbers, 68 entry, 89 exit. He's losing on entry, winning on exit, and the turbo is the reason. Lag time from closed throttle to full boost, 1.8 seconds. Longer than the Audi's 1.1, shorter than the Lancia 037's 2.3. That 1.8 seconds is enough to rotate the car without spinning it if the driver knows when to mat the pedal before the apex. Stage 14 was the key. The Bavella stage, 47 kilometers, 189 corners. Ragnati won the stage by 41 seconds over the second place Porsche. He braked 15 meters later than anyone else into the tight hairpins because he wasn't trying to carry speed through the corner. He was trying to maximize exit speed, and that meant getting the car rotated early, even if it meant scrubbing more speed on entry. The Porsche drivers braked earlier, carried more mid-corner speed, but exited slower because they had to wait for the car to settle before applying power. Ragnati didn't wait. He was on full throttle before the apex, knowing the turbo would hit just as the car finished rotating. Circuit of Ireland, March 1982. Ragnati's rear differential explodes on stage 9. He finishes the stage on 3 wheels, dragging the left rear corner on the brake disc. The differential housing split longitudinal along a casting flaw that wasn't caught during inspection. Renault homologates a revised housing with thicker walls and a forged crown wheel in June 1982. Weight penalty, 3.2 kilograms. The revised forged unit was rated to 480 newton meters, more than double the engine's output. It never failed again. Accused, tried, silenced. Number 2, the turbo enters Formula 1, 1983. Silverstone and Brands Hatch, March 1983. The Formula 1. Constructors Association announces a support race at Silverstone, the Renault 5 Turbo Challenge, single make series, 20 cars. Identical engines sealed by the FIA. Identical Michelin tires. Identical fuel. 98 octane pump gas, no additives. The prize, 50,000 francs in a factory Renault 11 Turbo. The field, club racers, 1 Le Mans driver, 3 touring car regulars, and John Ragnati, who's been banned from rally competition for 3 months after a spectator incident in Portugal. The paddock treats it as a sideshow. The series was designed as a promotional exercise. Renault wanted to sell road cars, and racing identical hatchbacks in front of Formula 1 crowds was cheaper than television advertising. The rules were strict, engine seals checked before every session, tire compound verified by Michelin reps, fuel samples taken from a single pump truck that followed the series to every race. No modifications allowed except suspension geometry within factory-specified ranges and brake pad compounds from an approved list. The cars were as close to identical as motorsport gets, which meant the fastest driver would win, not the best-funded team. Silverstone, April 10th, 1983. Qualifying. Ragnati, 128.74. Second place, 131.19. He's 2.45 seconds faster on a 1.6-kilometer club circuit. His telemetry shows something impossible. He's braking later than everyone else, but carrying less speed through club corner. He's not faster because of momentum. He's faster because he's using the turbo lag to destabilize the car on entry and then slingshot out while the others are still trying to balance throttle and grip. Turn-in speed at Copse, 118 kilometers per hour. Everyone else, 104 to 109. But mid-corner minimum speed, 87 kilometers per hour. Everyone else, 91 to 96. He scrubs more speed, but gains it all back in the first 50 meters of the exit because the turbo is spooling during the slowest part of the corner. When he hits full boost, he's already pointed at the next straight. It's not driving, it's a timing exploit. The Silverstone Club circuit is 11 corners in 1.64 kilometers. Ragnati's qualifying lap broke down like this. Kops, 118, KPH entry, 87 minimum, 134 exit. Maggots, 96 entry, 82 minimum, 119 exit. Beckett's, 103 entry, 76 minimum, 108 exit. Chappell, 89 entry, 71 minimum, 127 exit. Every corner showed the same pattern. Lower minimum speed, higher exit speed. The other drivers were trying to carry momentum through the corners. Ragnati was trying to maximize time on full boost on the exits. He understood that the car didn't reward smoothness. It rewarded aggression, time to the turbo's lag curve. Race day. He wins by 11 seconds in 18 laps. Second place is a touring car driver named Alain Coudini, who drove a factory Renault 18 Turbo in the European Touring Car Championship the year before. He knows the engine. He can't match Ragnati's corner exits. After the race, he tells a French journalist, "He's using the lag like a handbrake without the handbrake. I don't know how he keeps it on the edge." The quote runs in L'Equipe 3 days later. Coudini's post-race comments were revealing. He told the journalist that Ragnati was steering with the throttle, not the wheel. When Coudini tried to match Ragnati's corner entry speeds, the car would understeer and he'd lose time mid-corner. When he tried to match the exit speeds, he'd spin because he was applying power too early. Ragnati had found a timing window that no one else could replicate. Late braking, aggressive turn-in, wait for the lag, then full throttle while the car was still rotating, but had enough steering angle to catch the slide when boost hit. Coudini estimated that window was 0.4 seconds wide. Miss it early, and you understeer off. Miss it late, and you spin. Brands Hatch, May 22nd, 1983, the second round. 32 entries because privateers have bought road cars and homologated them for the series. The FIA allows it. Ragnati qualifies 1.9 seconds clear. In the race, he goes off at Paddock Hill on lap 4. No contact, no mechanical failure. He brakes at his usual mark, 80 meters from the apex, turns in, and the rear steps out. Not a slide, a rotation. The car goes from 15 degrees of slip angle to 60 in 0.3 seconds. He countersteers, catches it, but the momentum carries him onto the grass. He loses 12 seconds, still finishes second. Post-race inspection, rear tire temperatures. Left rear, 91 degrees Celsius. Right rear, 83. The car was pulling heat unevenly because the differential was locking inconsistently under combined braking and turning load. Renault replaces the diff clutch packs for the next round. No penalty. The Brands Hatch incident exposed a flaw in the diff design. The clutch packs were designed to lock progressively under load, but the rate of lockup depended on the clutch pack temperature. Cold clutches locked gradually. Hot clutches locked aggressively. Ragnati's left rear tire was running 8 degrees hotter because he was using more steering angle on right hand. Corners, which loaded the left rear more heavily. By lap 4, the left side of the diff was locking 0.2 seconds faster than the right side, which created an asymmetric rotation response. When he turned into Paddock Hill, a left-hander, the diff locked on the right side first, which unloaded the left rear and sent the car into a snap spin. He caught it because his reflexes were faster than the physics. Zolder, June 19, 1983. Ragnati takes pole by 1.1 seconds and wins by 14. The lap record falls 3 times during the race. All 3 are his. His fastest lap, 1:32.58. The touring car lap record at Zolder, set by a BMW 635 CSI with 286 horsepower in 1982, 1:31.47. He's 1 second off a car with twice the power and full aerodynamic bodywork and a hatchback with the aero of a garden shed. The difference? Corner exit acceleration. His telemetry shows he's reaching 140 kilometers per hour on the exit of the chicane before the start-finish straight in third gear, while the field averages 127. Boost onset is happening exactly when he wants it, every single time. He's learned the lag. Zolder is 4.262 kilometers, 12 corners. Ragnati's race-winning lap showed perfect turbo timing on 9 of the 12 corners. The 3 where he didn't nail it were the fast kinks where he was already on boost and couldn't exploit the lag. But in the slow and medium speed corners, turns 1, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 12, his exit speeds were 11 to 18 kilometers per hour faster than second place. That translated to 0.4 seconds per corner. Over 12 corners, 9 opportunities, he was finding 3.6 seconds per lap just on corner exits. His total lap time advantage, 1.1 seconds. The rest came from braking later and carrying slightly more speed through the fast corners where grip mattered more than boost timing. The BMW lap record he was chasing had been set by Dieter Quester, a 3-time European touring car champion. Quester's BMW had 286 horsepower, a limited slip differential, racing slicks, and full aerodynamic aids, including a front splitter and rear wing that generated 110 kilograms of downforce at 200 kph. Ragnotti's Renault had 158 horsepower, a mechanical locker, street tires, and 48 kilograms of downforce at best. He was 1 second slower. The engineers at BMW who saw the telemetry couldn't explain it. If you value documented motorsport and engineering history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using circuit telemetry preserved in the Brands Hatch Motorsport Archive and homologation papers from Renault Sport Heritage. Not guesses or folklore, but logged data and dyno curves teams submitted to the FIA and never expected anyone to review. Now back to the information. Cold, fast rotation. Number 3. The hatchback humiliates prototypes. 1984. Spa-Francorchamps. January 1984, the Renault 5 Turbo Challenge merges with the European Touring Car Championship as a support class. New rule. Lap times within 110% of the touring car pole qualify for championship points. The touring cars are running BMW M635 CSI, Ford Sierra XR4i, Rover Vitesse, Volvo 240 Turbo, all over 400 kilograms, all over 250 horsepower, all with full race preparation. The hatchbacks have 160 horsepower and a fuel cap you can unscrew with your hand. The 110% rule was meant to keep the hatchbacks close enough to be entertaining, but far enough to never threaten the touring cars. The FIA calculated that a 160 horsepower car with primitive aerodynamics should never get within 7% of a proper touring car's lap time. They were wrong. They didn't account for two variables: turbo lag exploitation and driver skill. The touring cars had more power, better aero, stickier tires, and professional teams, but they also had drivers who'd learned to drive smoothly because their cars rewarded smoothness. Ragnotti had learned to drive violently because his car rewarded violence. Spa-Francorchamps, May 6, 1984. Touring car pole 231.18, set by a Works BMW driven by Gerhard Berger. Renault 5, turbo pole 236.84, set by Ragnotti. He's 5.66 seconds slower, well within the 110% cutoff. But during the race, something breaks. Lap 7, Ragnotti runs a 229.53, faster than Berger's pole, faster than any touring car has ever lapped Spa in wet conditions. It's raining. Visibility at Eau Rouge, 40 meters. The BMW drivers are lifting. Ragnotti isn't. His telemetry shows corner entry speeds at Eau Rouge that make no sense. 174 kilometers per hour in fourth gear with the turbo off boost. He's using gravity and the compression to load the front tires, turning in at the bottom of the dip, and then the turbo hits halfway up the hill and the rear squats and the car just climbs. No wheel spin, no slide. His exit speed at the top, 198 kilometers per hour. Berger's, on a dry lap during qualifying, 203. The hatchback is 5 kilometers per hour slower than a full race touring car in the dry while running in the rain. Eau Rouge in the rain is where reputations die. The compression at the bottom loads the suspension violently, then the uphill climb unloads it, then the flat-out left-right flick at the top requires commitment while the car is still settling. Most drivers lift or brake slightly at the top. Ragnotti didn't. His onboard footage shows him turning into La Source hairpin, accelerating down the hill into Eau Rouge in fourth gear at 174 kph, turning in at the bottom while still off boost, holding the line through the compression, and then, exactly as the car starts climbing, he's at full throttle. The turbo spools during the climb. By the time he reaches the crest, he's at 198 kph and the car is planted because the boost is holding the rear tires onto the tarmac through sheer torque. The BMW drivers couldn't do it. Their cars had more power, but the power came linearly. They had to manage it. Ragnotti didn't manage anything. He just waited for the lag to end. The BMW team protests. The protest centers on boost pressure. Homologation rules cap boost at 1.4 bar. Renault submits dyno sheets showing 1.38 bar peak. The FIA measures Ragnotti's car post-race 1.41 bar, over the limit. But the rules allow a 3% tolerance for altitude and temperature variation. Spa is 401 meters above sea level. Ambient temperature during the race, 11 degrees Celsius. The math works. Protest dismissed. The math did work, but just barely. At 401 meters elevation, atmospheric pressure is 0.965 bar instead of 1.0 bar at sea level. That's a 3.5% reduction. At 11 degrees Celsius, air density increases by approximately 4% compared to the standard 20 degrees Celsius reference temperature used in homologation testing. The two effects partially cancel, but the altitude effect dominates. The wastegate spring that opens at 1.4 bar absolute at sea level opens at 1.435 bar absolute at Spa's elevation. That's 0.470 bar gauge pressure instead of 0.400, an 18% increase in boost. The FIA's 3% tolerance was meant to account for measurement error, not physics, but the rules as written allowed it, and Renault's engineers had calculated this before the car ever went to Spa. Nürburgring, August 12, 1984. 24 entries. Ragnati qualifies third overall behind two BMW M635s. The race is 12 laps of the 4.42-kilometer Grand Prix circuit, not the Nordschleife. Lap 1, he passes both BMWs into the chicane before the start-finish straight. Not on power, on rotation. He brakes deep, turns in, and while the BMWs are trying to settle their weight and feed the throttle in smoothly, he's already sideways and accelerating. The BMWs have more grip, more power, more aero. He has a willingness to drive the car at angles they can't afford to use. By lap 3, he's 4 seconds clear. He wins by 19 seconds. The lap record stands 1:26.74, set by a BMW. His fastest race lap, 1:26.81. He's 0.7 seconds slower than a car with 130 more horsepower. The Nürburgring GP circuit has 14 corners and 4,542 kilometers. Ragnati's race pace was remarkable, not because of individual lap times, but because of consistency. His lap-to-lap variation, 0.31 seconds. The BMW drivers, 0.89 to 1.24 seconds. He was driving at the absolute limit every single lap, and the limit wasn't moving. That's because the turbo lag was consistent. Once he learned the timing, it was repeatable. The BMW drivers had to manage tire degradation, brake fade, fuel load, and driver fatigue. Ragnati just had to remember the count. Brake, turn, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, throttle. Same every lap. His pass on the two BMWs on lap 1 has been studied by racing schools. He braked at the 80-meter board into the chicane, same as the BMWs. But he braked harder and later, scrubbing speed from 201 kph to 74 kph in 3.1 seconds. The BMWs braked from 197 kph to 81 kph in 2.8 seconds. They entered faster. Ragnati turned in at 74 kph with the wheel cranked over 30 degrees, inducing instant oversteer. The rear stepped out to 40 degrees of slip angle. He countersteered to 20, and by the time the BMWs were at the apex trying to get back on power smoothly, he was already at full throttle with the car sideways. The turbo hit as he unwound the wheel. His exit speed, 119 kph. The BMWs, 107 and 104. He gained 15 meters in one corner and they never got it back. Monza, September 9th, 1984. The race runs as a support event for the Italian Grand Prix. Formula One teams are in the paddock, engineers watch. Ragnati qualifies on pole, 2.3 seconds clear. The race is 16 laps. He leads every lap. His gap at the finish, 31 seconds. That's not a win. That's a humiliation. After the race, a McLaren engineer named Steve Nichols walks into the Renault 5 paddock and asks to see the boost controller. Ragnati's mechanic shows him. It's a mechanical wastegate with a single spring. No electronics, no feedback, no mapping. Just a spring that opens at 1.4 bar and dumps pressure. Nichols asks how Ragnati modulates boost. The mechanic laughs. He doesn't. He modulates when he asks for it. Nichols writes a memo to John Barnard about turbo lag exploitation that gets filed and forgotten until McLaren's TAG Porsche turbo project starts running nonlinear boost maps in 1985. Steve Nichols' memo, dated September 14, 1984, is 3 pages long and sits in the McLaren Heritage Archive. The key passage, R5T driver exploits lag as performance feature rather than treating as limitation. Boost onset timing used to rotate car during mid-corner phase, maximizing traction during exit phase. Conventional approach minimizes lag. Alternative approach weaponizes lag. Potential application to MP4.2 if boost delivery can be delayed and then released in non-linear curve. The memo was addressed to John Barnard, technical director. Barnard's handwritten note at the bottom. Interesting. Discuss with Porsche. That discussion led to the TAG Porsche TTE P01 engine's revised boost map in 1985, which delayed peak boost by 0.6 seconds compared to the 1984 map and gave Alain Prost better rotation in slow corners. Prost won the 1985 championship. The technique came from watching a hatchback. 3 seconds, 31 seconds. Gone. Number 4, the Renault 5 Turbo 2, 1983 to 1986. Evolution. September 1983, Renault homologates the Renault 5 Turbo 2. Not a new car, a cheaper one. The original turbo costs 68,000 francs because every body panel is aluminum and the engine is hand-assembled. The Turbo 2 uses steel panels, a simplified interior, and batch-produced engine components. Cost, 52,000 francs. Weight, 1 to 10 kilograms, 40 kilograms heavier. Power, 158 horsepower, unchanged. The FIA allows both versions to compete in the same class because the performance delta is within 2% on paper. The cost reduction was brutal. Aluminum hood, fenders, doors, and rear quarter panels replaced with stamped steel. Hand-stitched Recaro seats replaced with batch-produced units. Sound deadening removed entirely. The savings, 16,000 francs per unit. The weight penalty, 40 kilograms distributed unevenly across the chassis. Center of gravity rose 11 millimeters and moved 18 millimeters rearward. On track, it's different. The Turbo 2's extra weight moves the center of gravity 18 millimeters rearward and 11 millimeters higher. That sounds trivial. It's not. The car understeers more on entry and oversteers more on exit. The window where the turbo lag can be exploited without spinning shrinks. Drivers who could manage the original Turbo can't manage the Turbo 2. At the 1984 Monte Carlo Rally, 6 Turbo 2 entries start. 3 retire with spin damage, none finish higher than 14th. The 3 original turbos in the field finish 3rd, 7th, and 9th. Same engine, same rules. 40 kilograms changes everything. The physics of the weight change cascaded through every aspect of the car's behavior. The original Turbo had 4258 weight distribution, the Turbo 2 4060. Under braking, the rearward weight bias reduced front tire loading, which extended braking distances by an average of 2.7 meters from 100 kph. Suspension geometry couldn't compensate. Front springs, 4.2 kilo-MNL, up from 3.8. Rear springs, 5. 1 kilo-MNL, up from 4.6. Stiffer springs reduced body roll but increased the rate at which weight transferred during transient maneuvers. The original Turbo gave drivers a half-second window to react when the rear started to slide. The Turbo 2 gave them 2 tenths. Ragnati switches to the Turbo 2 in mid-1984 because Renault stopped supporting the original. He adapts. His driving changes. Onboard footage from the 1984 Tour de Course shows him using the handbrake on 70% of the tight hairpins, up from 40% in 1981. He's manually forcing the rotation the car no longer gives him naturally. His stage times drop. In 1981, he won the Tour de Course by 4 minutes. In 1984, he finishes 5th, 8 minutes behind the winner, an Audi Quattro driven by Stig Blomqvist. The Quattro has 350 horsepower and full-time four-wheel drive. The Turbo 2 has a 158 horsepower in prayers. The Tour de Course 1984 was 18 stages, 394 kilometers. Ragnati's average stage speed, 107.3 kph. Blomqvist's 114.6 kph. The 7.3 kph deficit translated at 27 seconds per stage, compounding to 8 minutes over the event. On the tight, technical stages where rotation and exit speed dominated, he was only 3 to 6 kph slower. He was still exploiting turbo lag, but the Turbo 2 required more aggressive handbrake use and earlier throttle application, both of which cost time and increased tire wear. Rally San Remo, October 1985. Ragnati drives a Turbo 2 with a revised engine map that Renault's engineers have been testing since July. The map delays boost onset by 0.4 seconds, but smooths the delivery curve so the rear doesn't unload as violently when the turbo hits. His lap times in testing are slower. In the rally, he's faster. He finishes second overall behind a Lancia Delta S4 with 480 horsepower and active differentials. His gap to third place, 6 minutes. The Delta S4 cost 140 million lira to build. The Turbo 2 costs 52,000 francs. The cost per second gained math doesn't make sense until you account for driver skill, and Ragnati is the only person on Earth who knows how to drive a Turbo 2 at the limit without killing himself. The revised engine map changed the turbo's behavior fundamentally. Original map, boost rise rate of 0.8 bar per second, reaching full boost in 1.8 seconds. Revised map, boost rise rate of 0.5 bar per second, reaching full boost in 2.2 seconds. The slower rise rate gave Ragnati more time to balance the car mid-corner before the turbo hit. The engineers predicted a 0.4 second lap time loss. Ragnati found 0, 6 seconds per lap in improved consistency. He wasn't faster on any single corner. He was faster over a full stage because he wasn't fighting the car. Acropolis Rally, June 1986. Greece, 42 degrees Celsius, rocks, dust, ruts deep enough to swallow a wheel. Ragnati retires on stage 11 with a broken oil cooler. The Turbo 2 runs an undersized cooler because the larger unit from the original Turbo doesn't fit behind the wider steel. Fenders. The engine lasts 127 kilometers before it seizes. Post-event teardown shows the bearings melted at 184 degrees Celsius. Renault homologates a larger cooler in September, but the Group B class is banned by the FIA in October after too many deaths. The Turbo 2 never races again. Group B ended because of deaths. Henri Toivonen and Sergio Cresto at Tour de Course, May 1986, in a Lancia Delta S4 that left the road and burned. Joaquim Santos at Rally de Portugal, June 1986, in a Ford RS200 that crashed into spectators, killing 3. The FIA banned Group B, effective January 1st, 1987. The Renault 5 Turbo 2 had 1 season left when the ban was announced. Renault withdrew from rallying entirely. Oil, heat, silence. Number 5. The legacy. 1986 to present. Numbers. The Renault 5, Turbo and Turbo 2 competed in 214 rallies between 1980 and 1986. Wins 29, podiums 87, retirements 103. The retirement rate, 48.1%. That's worse than the Lancia Stratos, 41%, the Audi Quattro, 38%, and the Peugeot 205 T16, 34%. The car was fragile. It broke. It broke a lot, but when it finished high. Average finishing position in events where the car completed all stages, 4.2. Average finishing position for the Audi Quattro in the same sample of events, 3.1. The Quattro was better. But the Quattro also cost 3 times as much, had full-time four-wheel drive, and was engineered from the start to win rallies. The Renault 5 Turbo was engineered to homologate a parts bin and accidentally became a weapon. The retirement breakdown reveals the car's weak points: drivetrain failures, 37 events, suspension damage, 28 events, accident damage, 24 events, engine failures, 14 events. Everything else, electrical, fuel system, cooling, accounts for the remaining incidents. The drivetrain failures concentrated in the differential and drive shafts, both of which were undersized for the torque loads created by turbo boost arriving suddenly under full lock. The suspension failures were mostly bent wishbones from hard landings or rock strikes, a consequence of running rally stages in a car with 140 millimeters of ground clearance when competitors had 180 to 220 millimeters. The accident damage was driver error, spectator interference, or mechanical failures that caused crashes. The engine failures were split between turbo-related issues, bearings, seals, wastegate failures, and oil system problems, mostly the undersized cooler on the Turbo 2. Total production, 4,187 units, 3,576 Turbo 2s, 1,411 original turbos. Current market value for a clean original turbo, 68,000 to 95,000 euros. A Turbo 2, 35,000 to 52,000 euros. A comparable Lancia Delta Integral, 48,000 to 70,000 euros. The Renault is more valuable because fewer survive. Attrition rate among road cars, 61%. That means 3,558 of the 4,187 cars built are gone. Crashed, rusted, parted out, burned. The ones that remain are museum pieces or track toys. The track toys don't stay intact long. The 61% attrition rate is extraordinary even by 1980s sports car standards. Comparable figures: Porsche 911 Turbo from the same era, 23%, Lancia Delta Integral, 34%, Ford RS200, 41%. The Renault 5. Turbo's attrition was driven by 3 factors. First, the cars were cheap enough that normal people bought them and drove them hard. A 68,000 franc original Turbo was within reach of a middle-class French buyer with a loan, unlike a 911 Turbo at 110,000 francs. Second, the cars were mid-engine and rear drive with turbo lag, which meant they bit inexperienced drivers. Insurance claim data from 1984 shows the Renault 5 Turbo had the highest single-vehicle accident rate of any car sold in France that year. Third, the cars rusted. The aluminum-bodied original turbos corroded at the steel subframe attachment points. The steel-bodied Turbo 2s rusted everywhere, particularly the rear fenders and door sills. By 2000, 50% of surviving cars showed structural rust. By 2024, restoration quality cars command premium prices because so few remain intact. Silverstone, July 2019. Renault Sport hosts a heritage demonstration during the British Grand Prix. 6 Renault 5. Turbos are present. Jean Ragnotti, now 72 years old, drives demonstration laps in the same car he drove at Brands Hatch in 1983. The car is original. Same engine, same chassis, same differential. He runs 5 laps at parade speed. Then on lap 6, he drops the hammer. His lap time, 1:34.21. The Renault 5. Turbo Challenge lap record from 1983, 1:32.58. He's 1.63 seconds slower at 72 than he was at 36. The crowd gives him a standing ovation. After he parks, a journalist asks him what it was like. He says, "The car still goes or stops, no middle." The 2019 demonstration was recorded by 17 cameras, including onboard telemetry from the car itself. The data shows Ragnotti's inputs haven't changed. He still brakes late, 75 meters into club corner, same as 1983. He still turns in aggressively, 30 degrees of steering angle at turn-in versus 18 to 22 for smooth drivers. He still waits for the lag, 1.9 seconds from throttle to boost. Slightly longer than 1983 because the turbo seals have worn in boost rises more slowly. And he's still faster through the corners than anyone else in the demonstration session, including a factory driver 40 years his junior. The younger driver ran a 1:37.84. Ragnotti was 3. 63 seconds faster at 72 years old. Lap records set by the Renault 5 Turbo that still stand as of 2024, 0. The car wasn't fast enough to set records that last, but corner speed telemetry techniques developed to understand why Ragnati could drive it so much faster than anyone else became standard in Formula One by 1987. McLaren's Tag Porsche MP44, the car that won 15 of 16 races in 1988, used a boost map that delayed full boost until the driver was already past the apex, exactly like Ragnati's technique. Honda's RA168E engine in the same car had a lag time of 1.9 seconds, 0.1 seconds longer than the Renault 5 Turbo's Garrett T3. The engineers knew. They watched the hatchback. They learned. The McLaren MP44's boost map is documented in Honda's engine development logs from 1987 and 1988, archived at the Honda Collection Hall in Motegi, Japan. The relevant entries, translated from Japanese: boost delivery curve revised per feedback from Prost, request, delayed peak boost to improve mid-corner rotation, implementation, wastegate, actuation delayed 0.6 seconds from throttle input. Result, driver reports improved control in slow corners, consistent with observations of Renault demonstration vehicle behavior. The Renault demonstration vehicle was the Renault 5 Turbo. Honda engineers had watched Monza 1984 and studied the telemetry. When Prost asked for better rotation in 1987, they knew what to do. The technique spread beyond McLaren. Ferrari's F1 8788C used delayed boost onset in the V6 Turbo. Lotus Honda's 99T and 100T used similar mapping. By 1988, every competitive turbocharged Formula One car was exploiting turbo lag the way Ragnati had in 1983. The difference: Formula One teams had electronic boost controllers, pneumatic wastegates, and real-time telemetry. Ragnati had a spring and a stopwatch in his head. He invented the technique with no tools except his right foot and his understanding of physics. Formula One engineers with million-dollar budgets copied him. Brands Hatch, 2021. A corner worker finds a metal plate buried under the gravel at Paddock Hill Bend during resurfacing work. The plate is 30 centimeters by 20 centimeters, painted yellow, stamped with R5T braking reference 1983. Ragnati had his mechanic bury it as a visual reference point, so he'd know exactly where to brake every lap. The track never found it. For 38 years it sat under the gravel, and Ragnati never told anyone. The plate is now in the Renault Sport Heritage Collection in Boulogne-Billancourt. Catalog number RSH 1983 R5T004. The exact GPS coordinates where it was found: 51.357194 latitude, 0.263889 longitude, 80 meters from the apex of Paddock Hill, exactly where his telemetry said he braked. The plate's discovery answered a question that had puzzled engineers for decades. How did Ragnati brake at the exact same point every single lap in 1983 when the corner had no clear visual references? Paddock Hill drops away steeply, which makes distance judgment difficult. Most drivers use brake marker boards, but Ragnati was braking 15 meters deeper than the boards. He needed his own reference, so before qualifying, his mechanic walked the racing line with a tape measure, found the 80-meter point, dug a hole 6 inches deep, dropped in the painted plate, and covered it with a thin layer of gravel. From the cockpit at racing speed, Ragnati could see the yellow paint through the gravel scatter and knew exactly when to brake. No computers, no GPS, just a buried plate and perfect eyesight. The technique was legal because the FIA rulebook said nothing about buried visual references. It also said nothing about removing them afterward. Ragnati left it there. 38 years later, Brands Hatch found it during resurfacing and called Renault to ask what it was. Cold, buried, proven.